Okay, Emma. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our second Equally Inclusive event. My name is Emma Blackburn, and I am the Regional Employer Services Manager for CTEC Plus. We're also pleased to be joined by an interpreter today who will be signing today's broadcast. So welcome to Jan Tilliard. So, coming up today, we have WorkFit with us, discussing their offer, which results in phenomenal staff engagement and retention rates. Investors in People will be joining us to discuss key fundamentals of implementing a wellbeing strategy. Then we'll have a session with Apex HR discussing how to manage the socio-economic key business challenges. The Royal National Institute for the Blind, RNIB, will be talking about some of the challenges facing people with sight loss. And last but by no means least, we'll hear from Livewell South West, their Ips Service and Wellbeing at Work scheme. I'm absolutely thrilled to be hosting the second of our Equally Inclusive events. These events are aimed at helping employers to widen their talent pool that they recruit from. Recruitment is, in my opinion, the single most important element of the success of any business. Getting the right people, doing the right job is key to ensure progression. The vast majority of the employers that we talk to are reporting that recruitment and retention is currently their biggest challenge. We've all heard phrases such as the Great Resignation. I'm sure we've all seen the impact of this one way or another. Today's event is about boosting employee engagement, which will in turn impact staff retention. So we would absolutely love your input in today's session. Please do send your questions in via the panel or Facebook comments, or you can WhatsApp us on 01872 228844, or feel free to leave comments in the chat. Later on, we'll be joined by Geraldine Scott-Smith, who is our marketing manager. Geraldine will be monitoring any of those questions that we receive and putting them to our panel of speakers later on in the show. So our first guest today is Adam Fletcher. Adam is a WorkFit coach from CTEC Plus. Welcome, Adam.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome. So, Adam, can you tell us a bit about your role at WorkFit, please?
Yes, my job predominantly is to support people who may be struggling and might fall out of work due to their mental health issues, stress, or just not coping at work for various reasons. My job is to support each person and find solutions to make their working life a better one. On some occasions, participants are terrified to speak to their employer due to low confidence and self-esteem. Our aim is to empower every person to gain this belief within themselves, where also able to speak to employers on their behalf to build this trust.
That sounds like it's amazing work that you do, Adam, that bridge and that broker almost between the participant and the employer when those challenges kind of get in the way. So on that, can you tell us some of the challenges that participants are facing when you're supporting them into work?
Yeah, a lot of participants, each person has their own challenges. A lot of the people that I work with is low self-esteem or anxiety, depression, being out of work for such a long time and then going back into work and finding how they can cope with that work-life balance again. And it's a lot to do with just getting people back into the life of having a working day job and getting that roll across where they can then become sufficient with controlling their own money without the help of benefits and everything like that. So we try and take that stress away where they're waiting for their first month's wage, and we help them with a little bit of help along the way with that.
We underestimate, I think, those challenges, don't we? That, you know, for people that are in work and have been in work for a long time and are fortunate enough to be or to not have been unemployed during the current sort of situation, but that anxiety around going back to work, whether that's financial, whether that's, like you say, confidence and esteem type things, that is absolutely heightened, I think, in the last couple of years. Have you seen a bit more of an increase in those sorts of
So I've been with WorkFit for 9 months now, and I still see now people that haven't been in work since the start of COVID, and after nearly 3 years of being out of work, they just haven't got the confidence to go back into a new workplace, meet all of these new people. They're unsure how new managers are going to treat them. So we try and bridge that gap and build them together so their managers understand, and generally it all works out well in the end.
Brilliant. And I know that the rates are absolutely phenomenal of the work that you guys do on WorkFit. So how do you help participants engage and stay in work? We're all about retention today.
So one of my first ever ones was when I first started. I was a chef for 22 years before I started working for CTech Plus, and I've got a little bit of background with Andy's Man Club, which is a national charity. One of my first ever referrals was a chef from Gosport. I'll call him John, but that's not his real name. He got offered a job 5 times from 5 different places, and each time on his first day of work he didn't attend because of his confidence. He had very low self-esteem and just didn't trust himself and his ability that he could do the job. So I got chatting to him after a few weeks and talked about the chefing world and my background and everything like that. And we got to his first job again, passed his interview, got offered the job. On his first day, I phoned up his employer, who was the head chef, told him about what was going on with John's permission. And the head chef was going to wait at the front door for him with a cup of coffee. And I phoned John at 9:30 in the morning on the phone. Spent 45 minutes with him, travelling over to the other side on the Gosport ferry, and we had a nice long chat, talked all the way, and his head chef met him with a cup of coffee, and 8 months later he's still working there, and I still get regular updates off him saying thank you, and without that support he wouldn't have got there. So just that little bit of time, giving people a walk to work chat, has made a big difference to that person.
It's that preparation and support at that point where it can or feel too much, isn't it? Absolutely.
Yeah.
What brilliant work. Okay. And how about staying in work then? So that's that kind of getting them over the line, helping them to take that leap. And it is a leap, isn't it? If you've been out of work for a long time. So how about your engagement with people and supporting them to stay in work?
So first of all, obviously, when you start work, your benefits can stop, or if you're not earning quite enough money on your first paycheck, you're going to struggle with bills or getting around how you're going to pay bills. So we try, along with the other part of CTech, we'll try and take that burden away by giving people food vouchers, petrol money and things like that, to try and make sure that they're able to get that step into earning regular money. So it's things like that, and employer engagement as well, making sure that the employers understand what that participant is going through, and they can also help with giving them sub on wages or food vouchers through their own workplace.
I think we underestimate as well that employer engagement and just the employer, like you say, being aware of the situation, because we're talking about challenges that are facing huge pockets of our population, of the labour market, huge amounts of people. And actually, certainly the employers I talk to, and I'm sure your experience will be the same, Adam, will say, what can we do to help? How can we make this easier? We want, this person's great. We really want them to stay in work. What do we need to do?
Just engage with employees a bit more. Put an open poster on your workplace or in your canteen. Just say, if you need any help, talk to us. We'll help you. Give people, your staff or your workforce, points of interest of where they can get help, and have a dedicated person who's able to do that for them.
Yeah, it's that open door policy, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Brilliant. So can you give us an example of how reasonable adjustments are key to providing in-work support?
Yes, so we had one chap who wasn't my participant, so I'm using another lady on my teams. So he was disabled, I think visually and dyslexic disability, and he worked for a chain supermarket, and Elizabeth got to grips with this employer or his line manager, and they got him visually impaired products to help him with his job, got him a tablet so he could read his instructions carefully and tick them off when he's done them. So it's all things like that, and we can work with every employer to suit the best needs for that participant.
Brilliant. And it is what is often, I think, a small adjustment can make such a big impact.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And would you say that, generally speaking, they're kind of small adjustments that are, cost wise, do you find that they're not overly expensive adjustments?
Not really. With the big organisations like supermarkets, those costs are not going to be much, and most adjustments they'd have on site anyway. Smaller companies might find bigger adjustments, but a lot of adjustments can be very cost effective rather than re-employing someone else. So it's worth investing in the people that you've already got.
Oh, I like that. Absolutely. Yeah. Brilliant. So what's next for WorkFit, Adam?
Well, some exciting, I think. WorkFit has had such great success in supporting its clients internally with working health and jets. So we're looking in and doing talks with other providers to offer this great support to their participants. We're also looking at going externally, and we encourage organisations to make contact and have a chat with us so we can offer and provide their organisation's employees the same service that we treat with CTEC itself. And if people want more information, they can contact us on workfit@plus.org.uk or our team leader direct, christopher.hall@plus.org.uk.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much, Adam. Really, really interested. And as always, I'm always pleased to hear about the great things that WorkFit are doing. So thank you so much.
Our retention rate at the moment is 84%.
Yes, 84%. I mean, that's fabulous, isn't it? I think we'd all like a bit of that. Brilliant. Thank you
for having me
so much, Adam. No problem. You take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Our next guest speaker is Paul Devoy. Paul is CEO for Investors in People. Paul.
Hi.
Hello.
Welcome,
thank you.
Nice
thank you for joining us. Yeah, I'm really pleased you could make it. The work Investors in People do is so pivotal, in my opinion, in enhancing employee engagement, which we know, quite rightly, is a hot topic currently. So, Paul, I've got a few questions for you, as you can imagine. In your opinion, what are the foundations of a successful wellbeing strategy?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of misconceptions about what should be in a wellbeing strategy. Quite often, when you discuss wellbeing, people's mind instantly goes to gym memberships and free fruit and all of those kind of other plethora of different things that are quite often offered by employers. I take a slightly different starting point. If you look at the research, our well-being and experience at work is very largely determined by our relationships with our colleagues, but predominantly with our line managers. And if you talk to anyone in the health profession, I'll give you a specific story on this. I was talking to a GP one day at a wellbeing event at the House of Lords, and I said to him, what's your experience of people coming into your surgery, presenting particular health issues? He said that 80% of the people who came in presenting a mental health issue was work-related, and the vast majority of them were related to their relationship with their line manager. And he said rather than trying to organise, some sort of counselling or therapy or giving them some sort of antidepressant, he wished he could write them a prescription for a better boss. So for me, the starting point is we need to invest in our managers. We need to help our managers manage people better. And that for me is one of the key fundamentals of a wellbeing strategy. Long before you get to gym memberships, yoga classes, fruit baskets, free food, getting the leadership and culture right. Because no matter what else you do, in effect, what you're trying to do with wellbeing quite often is ameliorate the problems that you've created by not having the right type of culture and not having the right type of leadership practices. So not enough time, I don't think, is spent in that. And I'll give you another stat just to back that up. We have over 2 million accidental managers in the UK. That's people that are put into management positions who haven't been properly trained to do the job. and I'm not sitting here beating up on managers. I'm a manager, and quite often I'm not very good at it. It's a very, very difficult job. It requires a huge amount of skill, but we wouldn't let someone become a surgeon or an engineer or drive a lorry without having the proper training and qualifications to do it. But leadership and management is something that we just think anybody can pick up, and it's not for everyone. So for me, before you start on your wellbeing strategy, you've got to get those fundamentals in place.
That's a really good point, Paul. I think there's definitely a culture of, if somebody's very good at their job, we move them into management to show other people how to be very good at their job. But, that doesn't necessarily mean they're very good at leading.
Exactly. And not quite often. Sometimes the things that make you good at the technical job you're doing actually mean that you're probably not going to be very good at leading people. Yeah. So, it's a completely different skill set. And it's a rare combination when you can get someone who's good at their old technical job and good at leading and managing people too. That's why finding good leaders and managers is really quite tough, because finding people who are able to combine both of those skills, there's not a great pool of them, and therefore it doesn't come naturally to everyone, but everyone can learn to do it competently if we invest the time in training them up properly, which I don't think we do enough.
No, and I think we naturally promote people when they've played to their strengths, like you say, and they've been very good at the technical side of it, but often those strengths are potentially the reason that the leadership side of it probably isn't going to be where we need it to be. Yeah, it's a really, really good point that you make. So once the foundations are in place, what are the fundamentals that will see the strategy become a success?
So the next step after that is, and don't get me wrong, it's not a short-term fix getting the fundamentals in place. That's a long-term ongoing thing. So, it's not just about sending people on a 2-week management course and then you tick a box and you think everything's fine. It's about ongoing development of your leaders and really investing in them. It's a bit like, I think, how in an aeroplane, if they say to you, if there's an issue and the oxygen mask comes in, you need to put the oxygen mask on yourself. A leader can't look after his team properly if the leader or her is not well enough themselves. So investing in the well-being and the training in your leaders is a key aspect. Then in terms of other parts of it, we really advocate that you have a data-led approach. We've spoken to hundreds of organisations who have implemented wellbeing, and I think the common theme is they tend to have a kind of dolly mixture set of different offers that they provide for their staff, but not always is it linked back to what the need actually is. So doing really good an analysis on what are the issues that are coming up in terms of wellbeing. Is it financial well-being? Is it psychological well-being? Is it social well-being? Is it physical well-being? And getting good, solid data points in all of those, and then determining what your offer is on the back of getting that data in place. And again, I think the mistake that many organisations make is they quickly jump to the first thing that they see as potentially helping staff, and then it not actually being used. What you find quite often is that there's quite low engagement with wellbeing support. There's something like, I think somebody said to me, there's something like 25,000 wellbeing apps on the App Store. There's a lot of people selling snake oil out there, and you need to be really clear about what exactly is that the need is out there and exactly what it is that you're going to provide, and do the research to make sure the provision that you put in place is properly designed to meet the need that you've identified.
And then evaluating that and responding and being agile, because that can change, can't it?
Yeah. And the pandemic's a classic example of that. What was potentially the needs of people pre the pandemic is not necessarily the needs of it now. We've got 5 generations in the workforce now who may all be looking for different things. People coming from diverse backgrounds, so you can't make assumptions, which is why getting the data right, analysing it properly, and as you say, Emma, regularly evaluating what the data is telling you and how effective the wellbeing initiatives that you put in place are performing, so that you're continually refining and improving it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So after mastering the foundations and the fundamentals, what can a business expect to see?
mean, if you get it right, all the research shows that the upsides are phenomenal. If you've got a happy, healthy workforce, they're much more likely to stay with you. And when we've got 1.3 million vacancies in the job market at the moment, staff retention's never been a bigger issue. You get higher productivity because if people are well, then they can focus better, and therefore that improves the productivity of your organisation. So, you've got a whole load of different metrics there that will not only impact on the well-being of your employees, it will make your organisation perform more effectively. And then the third thing is your reputation as an employer will increase markedly. And as we know at the moment, there's a war for talent. So the more that you can differentiate yourself on being a place that's, healthy place to work, happy place to work, productive place to be, then, you're stealing a march on the competition who, a lot of organisations are way, way down the track in terms of getting their wellbeing strategy right.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I think, like you say, the competition out there is fierce, and I'm certainly hearing and seeing people moving, and the difference in what people are looking for in roles now and looking for in organisations. People will, and are being very choosy about who they work for. Why wouldn't you want to work for somebody with a good wellbeing strategy?
Yeah, you spend the majority of your waking hours in work. I think somebody told me the other week there that we spend 80,000 hours at work over our lifetime. So it's a long time to be miserable if you're not in the right place. So from our point of view, it's really important that you have a focus on getting that well-being right, because the upsides for your employees and the upsides for your organisation are huge.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. Thank you, Paul. And I understand we've now got a video from Investors in People. So we'll play that. Thank you so much.
So I'd say the key 3 reasons about why wellbeing is important to us at RHP Group. 1, and most importantly, it's quite simply the right thing to do. One of our core values is that we care, and a key part of that is that we care what happens today and tomorrow for our customers and also our employees. So for us to live and breathe that value, we really need to be taking it seriously to invest in our people's well-being. The second reason is that during the pandemic, people have put their lives into perspective, and that means that the importance of well-being has really moved up people's priority list. So I believe a fundamental reason or differentiating factor that people will use to choose or stay with an employer is now actually going to be their well-being strategy. Not just having a strategy in place, but looking for evidence about how that organisation delivers that strategy as well. And thirdly, linked to that, it makes total business sense. If you invest in people's well-being, it's going to reduce things like sickness absence and turnover. And if people are feeling at their best, they're going to deliver the best for your business and your customers as well.
Having 2 trained up first aiders, mental health first aiders, and that really has been important to be able to sort of spot signs earlier on, also kind of signpost people to us to really sort of talk about these issues before they become bigger problems. And also having direct sessions around our awareness on different mental health subject matters. And so whether that's gone out as a newsletter, it's been a delivered session, or we've just created opportunity to talk more and put down the work and focus on ourselves and get a conversation going about, well, how are you? How has it been? What's difficult? What are you finding that helps? And really trying to sort of get that sort of conversation as a more regular thing in the overall approach to well-being. It's something that you must keep doing through the year and keep revisiting and reminding people that you're there to help.
My proudest achievement in terms of wellbeing at JTI UK has been the creation of our culture around mental health and supporting that throughout the business. In 2017, stress or being off with anxiety or depression was almost a dirty word. And we've worked really hard with lots and lots of key programs, awareness sessions, upskilling our line managers and our teams to embrace the concept and talk about the elephant in the room, which has been mental health over the last few years. I'm really, really proud to say that now most of our teams are confident to come forward and disclose their mental health condition, whether that be to a member of the Wellbeing team or to their line manager, and discuss openly what support they need from JTI to continue to thrive at work. This is an amazing achievement. We still have lots of work to go, but this is my proudest moment.
We have found so many benefits in terms of working with the IIP framework. I'd say one of them is that sometimes making improvements in terms of employee engagement on a whole can feel quite overwhelming because it spans so many different areas. But what the framework does, it helps you break that down into really manageable different sections and different chunks that you can work together to help to achieve to keep improving. I'd say the second thing is that sometimes you don't know what you don't know. And you might feel that you're doing well in certain areas, but what the framework does, it provides a really objective view about where your gaps are. So whatever level you are in that area, it means that you can keep making progress and you've got some really tangible actions to work towards.
Wow, that was really interesting. Thank you, Paul, and Investors and People for that great video. Our next guest is Kevin Miller. Kevin is Chief Humanity Officer at Apex HR. Kevin, thank you for taking time to join us. I just love your job title.
Thank you very much, Emma. I'm delighted to be here. It's a real pleasure. And the job title was deliberately chosen because humanity underpins absolutely everything we do in work. Every organisation is effectively people and their relationships with each other.
Brilliant. And your job title screams that idea. I'm sure we need some Chief Humanity Officers in CTEC Plus. I'll see how I get on with that. So, Kevin, can you tell us a bit about Apex HR and what is your business focus?
Yeah, thank you, Emma. Well, as an HR professional, I'm really interested in looking at the role that HR can play and the HR community more broadly in shaping inclusive and human-centered work cultures. My starting point in setting up the business was that I don't see humans as resources. So if you think about the actual name of the profession, human beings are unique. We're not resources or objects. The laptop I'm having this call with you on today is a resource. Every single one of us has aspirations and hopes and also some fears and anxieties. That's what makes us all human. And I think if organisations can connect with that, we're going to make more progress.
Brilliant. Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. What would you say the role of a leader is in an organisation when shaping an inclusive culture?
Well, leaders, without doubt, Emma, have a fundamental role to play in shaping the culture for their teams. I think it's important to look at some definitions. So when we talk about culture, we talk about a combination of values, strong values, plus corresponding behaviours. Because for a culture to be authentic, you've got to have both working consistently. I think there's also an important distinction between management and leadership. It's something that often gets talked about. In my experience, I don't think people want or need to be managed. I think the work that people do needs to be managed, but people want and need to be inspired and uplifted and have opportunities to grow. And I think that's where we can tap into a leadership mindset, which is very much investing in people with things like emotional intelligence training, so that we're developing more compassion, empathy styles of leadership in our workplaces, because ultimately that's going to cultivate much better relationships. I think the other big trend we see, Emma, is a shift increasingly away from what I would say is a traditional command and control approach to management and supervision, to something which is much more coaching based, enabling people to discover those skills and talents that each one of us has, and to genuinely feel empowered to do their best work. So there are big significant shifts happening across the whole of industry, which again we believe HR can play a crucial role in nurturing that and supporting that.
Definitely. You mentioned about values as well, and I know this isn't in the script, but if we could just explore that. So I think for me, values, if you've got the right people with the right values in the organisation with, the same values that align, it's not work, is it? We've all heard that before, find a job you love and you'll never do a day's work, it's that sort of thing. Do you think values, we put enough emphasis on values within an organisation and within recruitment processes?
In essence, no. I don't think we put enough emphasis on shaping what I would call our authentic values, which are unique to the organisation. So a lot of organisations, they become, unfortunately, what I refer to as hollow values. They're words on a wall, but we don't live and breathe them in an authentic way in our day-to-day interactions. So it's spending some time to really discover those and think about what it is that makes your organisation unique. What is your founding purpose? What difference are you trying to make in the world? And for us, we would always encourage values to be emerging from everybody in the organisation. So everybody feels that they've got a role to contribute, rather than values being determined by the senior leaders and then cascaded down. Because this is all about connection and buy-in, and people genuinely feeling engaged, so they have a key role to play.
Definitely, and that's my thoughts exactly. I think values often become a bit of a marketing strategy, rather than actually, like you say, authentic values that people buy into, that people join an organisation because their values match that of the organisation. When that happens, that is when business, in my view, just propels. People are doing their best work for the best organisations. Brilliant. Sorry for going a bit ad hoc there.
No, you go wherever you need to take it, Emma.
Thank you. So what are your thoughts on the Great Resignation? How do we retain our great people?
Well, this is certainly a hot topic at the moment, isn't it?
It is.
There's very rarely a conversation I'm having with any business owner or chief exec or managing director which doesn't focus on the recruitment challenges in a very tight labour market. So look, a couple of my key observations on this. One is, personally, I think we're looking at the Great Resignation the wrong way round. I refer to it as the Great Disengagement. We've got to look at cause and effect. The resignation is a byproduct of not engaging and caring about people and valuing people. So the best way of dealing with a recruitment challenge is not to have one. So make time for people, care about people, invest in people, show genuine appreciation for people, and they're less likely to want to opt out and leave. So yeah, I think we sometimes look at cliched terms to describe these things, and actually what we need to do is the deeper work of understanding the root causes. I think most of the research will suggest, Emma, globally, that around 2/3 of people in most organisations feel disengaged. I mean, whatever we're doing, it's not working to the level it needs to for people to feel that level of connection. And I agree with previous contributors that at the heart of this is the relationship you have with your immediate line manager. It's that important.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. And a current key business challenge is presenteeism, which I don't think was anywhere near as much an issue pre-pandemic. How does this affect disengagement of staff?
Yeah, well, I think again, it's important just to step back and think about some of the terms. So every organisation wants people who can give us a consistent and reliable level of attendance. But we also need people to be well and to be healthy because without that, we don't build successful businesses. And look, in terms of what's happening in wider societies around the world, we're having the scarring effect still from COVID and having to completely rethink and reevaluate so many aspects of our lives. And just as we're emerging from COVID, we're facing a significant cost of living pressure. And I think this goes back to the fundamentals, Emma, of seeing the unique person first and the employee second. If we can shift our mindset, because we'll all be to varying degrees facing these significant challenges, and by doing more fundamentally around more listening, open listening without judgment at a human level makes such a powerful difference. So yeah, you can have higher levels of attendance, but that may be masking a slightly different issue if people are not feeling well supported in their roles more generally.
Yeah, absolutely. And not feeling comfortable or secure enough to take their time out when they need it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's such a good point that you make. So why should an employer consider health and well-being as a driving solution to manage these, what are really, really key business challenges?
Yeah, well, I would say, Emma, what is more important than people's health and well-being at the end of the day? What do we put as more of a priority than that? Alongside it being the right thing to do, there is an overwhelming and compelling business case for doing this. There are numerous ripple effects and benefits created for employers by shaping and nurturing a well-being strategy which shows we authentically care about each unique human being working with us. And I agree, we've got to move beyond tokenistic gestures around supporting well-being to something which is much more authentic. And we often talk, again, in the work we do, Emma, about the positive ripple effects when people go home at the end of the day. So if your well-being is supported in the workplace, you're more likely to go home and have more healthier and productive relationships with your family and friends, because we spend so much of our lives connected to organisations in the workplace. The way we feel and the way we're treated in our places of work, it has a huge significance for our wider lives. So those positive ripple effects for communities, we see that employers have got an amazing opportunity to actually build a better society.
Absolutely. And those ripple effects, the impact on family, the negative impact on family, which then negatively impacts the individual, and it becomes cyclical, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Fab. Okay. So what are your health and well-being top tips for employers?
So I think I'm always a big advocate, Emma, of keeping things simple. Sometimes I think in modern busy lives where we feel we're pulled in 100 different directions, sometimes it can feel a bit overwhelming. So the simple solution I would suggest is engagement is the next conversation. Making that next conversation meaningful, pausing to listen and be present, suspending judgment for a moment, genuinely trying to walk a mile in the shoes of somebody else creates such a powerful catalyst for change in organisations. And the more people we can get doing that, the better. I think a lot of it as well, a top tip for me would be a shift in our mindset around not seeing humans as resources or objects or numbers on a spreadsheet, but as unique people who are worthy of dignity and respect. And that requires brave leadership to embrace those opportunities. And then being a seasoned HR professional, shall we say, thinking about your internal systems and your policies. Are they supporting the culture you're trying to build, or are they getting in the way? And I say this as a long-standing HR professional. HR and the language we use can sometimes feel quite restrictive and based on punishment. And actually, if we can humanize that language and create something more people-centered, that can again create a very powerful force for change in organizations.
Absolutely. So what are the next steps then for an employer who's been inspired to become more inclusive? What do they need to do?
Well, generate some conversations in your organisation. Find allies. There will be lots of people in your organisations. Often the unsung heroes in organisations who are coming in every day, doing the right thing. Often they don't hold manager or leadership positions. They don't necessarily have that status, but they'll be ethical and they'll be responsible and they'll be desiring to do some real good. So make allies of them, give them a voice, hear them, listen to them, generate that conversation. If people are interested in the work we're doing, they're very welcome to come and visit our website to find out about some of the inspiring stories we're discovering with some really progressive organisations who are seeing so much benefit come from this approach. So they're very welcome to come and visit our website at www.apexhr.co.uk.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Kevin. Putting the human back into human resources.
Thank you.
Brilliant.
That's what it's all about.
It is what it's all about, an incredibly interesting discussion. So thank you so much for your time today.
It's my pleasure, Emma. Thank you.
So do remember to get in touch if you have any questions about anything you've heard so far. You can contact us via Facebook comments, or you can WhatsApp us on 01872 228844, or feel free to leave any comments in the chat. We'll have some time at the end to put your questions to the panel, so please do get in touch. So we've got another great video to show you. So this video is called Turning the Tables, and it's a short video, so please do enjoy it. Over to George and Charlotte, who are discussing the barriers to hiring processes.
I'm George. I have autistic characteristics. Or at least I believe I have autistic characteristics. Today I'm joined by Charlotte from Plus Positive People. Do you believe your lack of autism has caused any difficulties in trying to obtain work?
My lack of autism? Well, to be honest, I've always been quite fortunate actually, George, that I've always found applying for jobs to be quite easy for myself, and apart from my dyslexia, I wouldn't say it's... No, I would say I've always sort of got the jobs that I've gone for. How about you, George? Would you say with your autism, you do find it difficult looking for work?
I wouldn't say so much it's difficult to look for work. I would say it's difficult to apply and motivate those steps to actually try to get the job. It's one thing to see a list of jobs, it's another thing to actually apply for it and have the confidence that you're putting everything you need into that documentation, whether it's a CV or covering letter. They'll actually give you a chance against someone who doesn't have those difficulties doing it. And getting the right support is going to be key, because without it, I don't know what I'm doing is right or wrong. And that is probably where the autism really plays in, because I don't have that knowledge and I haven't been able to obtain it. Do you believe that you have not got jobs because you're not autistic, where someone who on the spectrum may have actually got that job instead of you?
I think it's quite rare, but I would probably, if I'm being honest, George, I think, yeah, I would say so, definitely. But isn't that the same for everyone?
I think it is, but it's understanding why. And discrimination, whether it's intentional or not, positive and negative discrimination is happening out there. And I think employers need to understand better what they're actually looking for and how to interpret the best way of asking for that information without making it obvious to the person at the receiving end. Because the last thing you want to do is feel like you've got a job because you've got a disability, but also you don't want to feel like you've got a job because you've got that disability. It's trying to make it so you've got the job because of what you can do. The disability is just an extra. We have to live with those disabilities, so it's a case of I've got the disability, my employee doesn't have that disability as far as I know. They are looking for an employee. They shouldn't be looking for a disabled employee or a non-disabled. And that discrimination does happen. I've been on both sides of it. Thank you for talking today, Charlotte. And how does it feel being on the opposite side for a change?
Well, George, I would say, if I'm being honest, I've actually found today quite difficult. I think it's on the other end. I feel like I'm seeing things from your world, which I really appreciate. I found the wording of the questions at times difficult, but it was just interesting, and I've just been so enlightened with your story and you sharing your experiences with autism, because today, having the questions flipped like that, I found it quite a challenge, if I'm being honest.
Not been as easy as some would think, but it is something I can learn from as well. Thank you.
Thank you, George.
Briefed enough on putting the human back into human resources. I certainly think George has encouraged us further. That's a great video. So I'd now like to introduce Andy Swan. So Andy is Employment Manager for RNIB, which is Royal National Institute of Blind People, and it's very obvious why they abbreviate that, because it's quite a mouthful, Andy. So thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you for inviting me along, Emma.
No
It's nice to be here.
I'm keen to hear about all of the great work that RNIB do, so please do tell us.
Yeah, of course. Well, RNIB, we're one of the UK's leading sight loss charities, and we certainly have the largest community of blind and partially sighted people under our umbrella. And we recognise that everyone's experience of sight loss is unique. Even people with the same sight condition will have different experiences. So we're set up to offer help and support for blind and partially sighted people and the agencies and the employers that they work with. So this could include anything from practical support, emotional support, practical things like reading services and daily living products, as well as at the same time campaigning for change, and trying to make society a better place.
Brilliant. Domestic and social trends are rapidly changing within our economy and industry environment. How likely is this going to impact the workplace in the next few years, Andy?
It's a good question. I think we're already starting to see the change. People are generally working later in life. We have an ageing population. People have less economic security than they would have in the past. And even, for example, the employment rate of people aged 65 and over in the last 20 years is more than doubled. So people are certainly working later in life. And as we know, the state pension age, and I hesitate to even give a figure for this because we know it changes all the time, but the state pension age is increasing. About a third of people expect that when they reach the state pension age, they want to keep continuing in their current job, working the same hours as they did before. So we know people are getting older, and particular acquired sight loss happens more to people as they get older. So we expect that the number of people with sight loss is going to increase because of these social trends that we're experiencing.
It's really interesting. And what are the employment challenges facing people with sight loss?
Well, it's quite an interesting idea. There's quite an uneasy fit between employment and sight loss. We know on the one hand that many people are very successful. People who are blind or partially sighted or who have some type of sight loss can succeed in quite a range of jobs. And at the same time, far too many people just can't even get into the labour market to start with. So we estimate there are around 11,000 people with sight loss in the UK who are actually looking for work now. But moving into work isn't always that straightforward. 4 out of 5 people who are in jobs have had some sort of adjustment made to help them complete their role at work. And that can include things like software on PCs or using equipment or making changes in the workplace or changes of their role. So that, there's for too long there's been quite an uneasy fit between having sight loss and having the job that you want to have.
And sometimes it's just the small changes, isn't it, that can bring, and we heard this from WorkFit, the small changes that bring a really big difference to employees in the workplace. Yeah,
you're absolutely right. I mean, I'm going to use an example here of Mel, who works in a housing association. Absolutely loves her job. She really enjoys working for that company, feels really valued. She feels like she gives a good service to her employers. And over the years, she's had various different treatments for her eye conditions and has always managed. But she got to a point where she left the hospital appointment being told, there's nothing else we can do for you now. Your sight has got pretty bad and it's going to continue. So Mel was devastated, and luckily she came to us just to get a bit of advice. She found us online. We were able to give her the confidence to be able to have a conversation with her line manager. And a line manager had never experienced this in the workplace, wasn't sure even how to go about things and what changes what needed to be made. So we were able to suggest some simple things, some adjustments to the PC she used, some equipment she might be able to use, and importantly, we were able to tell them where they could get the funding to make these changes, or at least part of the funding. So in the end, Mel was able to continue in her job, and my fear is that if Mel hadn't come in looking for work, she might not have known, if she hadn't come looking for help, she might not have known how to maintain that job. And RNIB sits somewhere in the middle of an employee and their employer to give advice to both people.
And there's a rolling theme there, isn't there, so far with all of our speakers about that communication and that engagement with an employer and with an individual. It's so important that support is there and is sometimes brokered. So that's a great example of how employers write support workplace adjustments. If we do that, people can absolutely flourish in work. Yes. Bringing individuality, creativity and innovation to an organisation. So we've got a video, haven't we? Let's take a look.
Yes.
Only 1 in 4 blind or partially sighted people of working age are in employment. We are a valuable, underutilised resource in the UK workforce. See what we can do.
I'm Chris Fawcett. I'm currently working as a regulatory compliance manager for a global education company.
I'm Laura and I'm an occupational therapy assistant working in mental health.
My name is Nathan and I'm a client advice officer.
My name is Dan and I'm a graphic designer and 3D visualiser.
I'm the director of a corporate events company.
I'm the Chief Operations Officer for Lighthouse London.
I'm a Parliamentary and Public Affairs Manager.
I'm a gigging musician from London.
I advise the Scottish Government on transport accessibility.
I'm Director of Services at a national charity.
I'm the UK's only visually impaired ice hockey player.
I have a rare form of macular degeneration, which means for me that I have lots of blind patches in my field of vision.
I was born with an eye condition called Leber's congenital amaurosis, and for me what that means is that I have no useful vision at all.
A bleed in my brain caused 90% vision loss.
I'm registered as severely sight impaired.
I have advanced glaucoma and I have tunnel vision.
I have albinism, which means my vision is very blurry and I can't see detail.
I find myself a lot on stages with keyboard and a MacBook and a screen reader.
All I need is a large monitor and to invert the colour on my screen.
I use text-to-speech software to help me do my job.
I use screen magnification software.
I use speech software on the computer and the inbuilt screen reader in my phone.
I use a pair of glasses that have a bioptic telescope.
I use a binocular like this for seeing things at distance.
I've taught over 1,000 children to roller skate.
I built my first computer in 2004.
I used to work for the Civil Service in Whitehall as a ministerial private secretary.
I'm an administrator for the Civil Service.
I'm a press officer.
The Community Development Officer.
I'm a locally elected councillor in the London Borough of Brent, where I'm also Cabinet Member for Housing and Welfare Reform.
I'm Scott and I'm a camera operator. I have extremely low vision in my left eye and I'm short-sighted in my right. And I made this film. See what we can do.
Take our Employment Accessibility Health Check to find out how inclusive your workplace is. Visit rnib.org.uk. RNIB. See differently.
Thank you for that. It's again, small changes, isn't it? That's another theme throughout. So how do our viewers get in touch to learn more about RNIB, Andy?
The easiest way to get us is either online or through our helpline. And you know, we're happy to deal with just one-off inquiries if an employer needs a bit of help or an employee needs a bit of advice. So we either that, or if someone needs to spend a bit more time, for example, if an employer needs to develop some good practice, you know, in recruiting and retention, it's all through the same place. So our helpline is 0303 123 9999, or we can be emailed on helpline@rnib.org.uk. Now, I should mention the Google product, but I'm not going to say the name out loud just in case I trigger anything off. But we can, if you have one of those Google-enabled products, just saying call RNIB helpline will put you through automatically. So, yeah, please contact us if you've got any questions you need to ask.
Thank you so much, Andy. Your input today has been enlightening. Really great to see you.
It's good to be here.
So now over to our final organisation, which is Livewell. So first we have Flipper from Livewell's IPS team. Flipper, it's great to have you here.
Hi, lovely to be here.
Thank you. Please tell us about the IPS service.
Okay, well, IPS is a nationally commissioned employment service. It's funded by the NHS and it's part of the NHS 10-year long-term plan for mental health. And it's an integral part of the community mental health framework and their transformation. It's an approach to support people with sort of complex and enduring mental health issues back into the workplace and to help them stay in work. So essentially, IPS services work in partnership, collaboration with sort of three key groups: the employee or potential employee, the employer, and the clinical team. So that's doctors, nurses, and psychologists. Some of us are clinicians, some of us are employment specialists who have worked in employment and support for people. And essentially, we work with employers to create a diverse workforce, so support people through that recruitment process. And we heard sometimes how difficult that is for people. We look at job matching, so work with employers to create opportunities for new roles or new ways of developing existing roles for people to come into. We support and enhance productivity, with wellbeing and awareness for mental health. And a lot of our work is really supporting people to understand mental health, and particularly the complex end. And one of the things that we found in our work is that some people are very anxious, or some employers are very anxious around looking at reasonable adjustments for mental health specifically. And mental health does fall under the Equality Act. So there are lots of supports around for that. And it's not fully understood by employers, and sometimes not by employees either. We will support people returning to work following sick leave for mental health reasons. And we feel that we can support enhancing the workforce and managers' understanding of mental health issues while keeping things focused and on track and that everybody's in role.
Brilliant. Yeah, absolutely. It's really key, isn't it? How do we boost happiness levels of our workforce. It's been recently reported that 2 out of 3 employees, and this is staggering, would not share mental health problems with their employer. How do we change that?
I guess we've listened to quite a number of people today who've actually offered some fantastic creative ways in which we can do that. I guess it's being able to enable managers, enable cultures, enable us as a organisation and organisations to really have those conversations about mental health, and not just the conversations about anxiety and depression. Maybe having more thoughtful conversations or more serious conversations about the other types of mental health issues as well, and be able to explore things about what we understand and what we don't understand. Some of the work I've done with employers has been very much around, is this a symptom of somebody's mental health issue? And I can support people to think about maybe not so much, or yes, that would what we'd be expecting. So it's actually being able to step in and have the conversations, as well as all the other structures around, wellbeing support, and supporting people to have the confidence and the words to be able to start to talk about what's going on for them and how it's impacting on their work. And what is available to them to support them in work. And that's part of the role that we have in IPS. Some of the things that we can do is broker between the employee and the employer. We do some specific work around personal disclosure. So there are times when we won't go into a huge amount of detail around somebody's mental health issue because we haven't been given that permission, but they have given us permission to say this is what's going on. So we're quite clear about that sort of process as well, to make it safe for everybody. There are other people that we work with that are really clear. They want their employer to know what's going on for them, so they can make the reasonable adjustments and things don't come as a shock or a surprise. So I think those things are really, really important as well.
They are, absolutely. So why is it important for employers to find a solution to tackle presenteeism?
Well, I think one of the things that we know is that presenteeism actually has a huge impact on, I guess, all sorts of different things, but particularly in terms of productivity. And it costs employers and the country a lot of money. I think it's something like £15 million. And I think that one of the things that's really important is that actually, if you want people to be productive, if you want people to engage in work, if you want people to stay in work, then actually being able to address presenteeism is a really important issue. It has a massive impact on people's mental health, and it has a massive impact on how people feel about work, and their stress and anxiety levels. And one of the things that we know is with more complex issues that actually people, we don't want to trigger even more mental health. So that's one of the areas.
Absolutely. It's a really, really key challenge at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah, yes, it is.
Yeah. So how do managers support employee mental health and well-being in the workplace?
So I think there's some quite key areas, and a lot of that has actually already been discussed. In terms of a range of different things. I suppose it's recognising that it's a multifaceted approach. There's something around locally. How do you have a conversation? How do you think about having a conversation about mental health together? And that might be the culture that you're developing in your team and then in your organisation. I think it's also thinking about what other supports are available and really supporting people to have access to those. It's also looking at things like the sort of specialist area of mental health, which is the area IPS services tend to work in. And that's making sure that people are supported to not just talk about it, but also talk about what helps them, what doesn't help them, reasonable adjustments. It's also looking at making sure that there is a parity between the sort of physical health and safety issues and the psychological and mental health and safety issues, that actually there's a parity between those, and therefore there's an equality around understanding mental health. Now that takes a lot of work, and I think we've heard about that through Investors in People and various stuff like that. So leadership's really, really important, as well as the support processes, and thinking about actually job structures. Is the structure right in terms of the job? Is there a way in which we can adapt it or think about it differently? Can it be done in a different way? And in fact, I think the last 2 years has shown us actually there's all sorts of ways in which we could develop services and develop job roles that can work in a slightly different way.
Yeah, it's a really good point. It's that creativity, isn't it, around, well, actually, we need to get this done. How can we get it done with, our humans being at the centre of what we're doing? Absolutely. So how should an organisation promote good mental health? We always see it as a negative, don't we? We talk about mental health as a negative. How do we promote mental health and good mental health?
So I think there are structures that you can have in your services that are around thinking and talking about mental health, but actually looking at some of the positives. So thinking about how mental health issues can actually help you going forward, can actually help you thinking about things differently. I think there are ways in which you can actually look at what support services are available both externally and internally. There's also the 5 ways to wellbeing, some quite key areas there that can really help everybody's mental health. So it's not just pinpointing that's the person in the team that's got the mental health issues. It's actually we all have issues where we have good days and bad days, and we all have different ways in which actually we manage it. And looking at the positive ways in which to do that is really, really important. And it isn't just about work. There's actually also outside of work that these sorts of things can also happen. I think it's also supporting a culture where our humans, our people, aren't afraid to talk about some of the difficult things in a private, supportive, thoughtful way. But actually, I think those are really, really important. And that employers have support like IPS employment specialists, where they can kind of ask the difficult questions. They go, is this right? Am I going to do this right? A lot of employers feel like they're concerned about asking a question or suggesting something because they don't want to make things worse. Many people who experience mental health actually would prefer people to just ask the question because they actually have the ability to say, actually, I don't want to talk about that, or actually, this is a way to think about it. So it's actually being able to think those sort of things through. And sometimes you might need that brokered by an employment specialist or by an IPS service or by a member of staff.
It's a really good point, and certainly something I say quite frequently when we're talking about disability confident. And what we often see is that employers, because they don't want to do the wrong thing, they do nothing. And actually that's the wrong thing. It is that let's just have open, honest conversations. Everybody wants to do the right thing. We can get there collectively, bringing in subject matter experts.
And that's one of the key things. And I think that's one of the key things about presenteeism is that kind of at the moment it's sort of a floating around word, and actually what's important is actually to be able to talk about it and think, okay, what is actually going on here, both locally, in a team and in an organisation, so that actually there can be some creativity around how do we address this, how is it impacting on us, what things can we do differently.
Absolutely. And why? That's the thing for me, it's presenteeism. Why is this happening? What, we need to get to the crux of that. Absolutely right. Brilliant. Thank you so much. And now we have Greg. So Greg is going to tell us about Livewell's health and wellbeing service. Hi, Greg.
Thanks, Emma. How are you? All right?
Very well, thank you for asking.
Good. No trouble at all. Yeah, so I think we've got a bit of a presentation we're going to run through this afternoon. Hopefully it won't take too long. And what I'm really looking to do is sort of, I suppose, if individuals that are watching today haven't already got a few ideas and a few thoughts to take away and action, then hopefully I can give people some sort of simple things they might be able to sort of think about and go and do. So if we can just have the next slide, please, that would be fab. Hopefully this works all right. Do my best Chris Whitty impression. There it is. So we've already covered, obviously, on a number of occasions this afternoon, how important a healthy, happy workforce is. And that's got to be the goal of any business, of any organisation. You want a happy, healthy workforce, whether it's about retention or improving the bottom line or the service quality, whatever that business might be looking to achieve. If your workforce are engaged and feel valued, then those things will look after themselves to a certain extent. Again, other people this afternoon have already spoken about the need to reduce things like absences. And if you've got a good reputation around staff wellbeing, that in itself will also attract individuals to that organisation, and if they're already part of that, they'll want to stay part of that organisation. So the evidence base is there, isn't it? To look after the organisation's people, then the organisation will kind of look after itself. Next slide, please. So what we're going to look at quickly this afternoon are just a few things, one of which my colleague Flipper, bless her, has already mentioned, which is the 5 ways to wellbeing, which if individuals haven't heard of before, is a simple kind of structure that an organisation or an individual can use to improve their mental health and their physical health. And it's just something that makes it, sometimes when I've spoken with individuals that are looking to feel better, it just helps them to sort of come up with a bit more of a kind of an easy, achievable action plan. And then once I've gone through the 5 ways to wellbeing, we'll also have a little look at a few other things we're doing more locally in Plymouth at the moment, and that might also give people a few ideas. So if we can jump on to the next slide quickly. So if individuals haven't heard of CLANG, or the 5 ways to wellbeing, this is in essence is it. So you're talking about 5 different areas that impact on our health that individuals can focus on or work on that will have a positive impact on their health and well-being. So if we jump onto the next slide and we look at them quickly one at a time, the first one's to connect. And if we think about the working environment, and especially over the last few years where there's been, loads of individuals that have been working in an organisation and have been able to connect with their colleagues on a daily, weekly basis, and then all of a sudden find themselves working from home. One of the things we've seen over the last few years, even within our own organisation, is that ability to be able to connect with colleagues has maybe been a little bit more difficult than it used to be, and that has had a negative impact on people's well-being. But what we've also seen is us come up with ideas to improve that ability to be able to connect with others. So whether that be, events like today and being able to embrace technology to be able to put people in contact with each other, that ability to be able to connect as human beings helps us to sort of look after our well-being. And even outside of work, I think most of us, we'd like to be able to connect with individuals with similar interests, and talk about things that, we have an interest in. If we jump on to the next one. And then we've got learn. So again, thinking about within the workplace, first of all, I think it was mentioned earlier that when you're in work, people like to feel as though they're contributing and that they're progressing and that there's like an action plan for them. And this is that about this again, human nature, that we want to learn. We want to kind of understand new things. So if organizations can create that kind of learning environment, again, that's going to have a beneficial impact on the health and well-being of their workforce. And then the next one, please. So to stay active, and this is maybe one that is more kind of commonly aware of. Most people know that if they move more, then that is generally going to have a positive impact on both their physical and their mental well-being. But again, over the last few years, has this been impacted on through the pandemic? Have people found themselves working from home, perhaps less likely to get up and go for a walk with colleagues, and therefore their activity levels have gone down? Or are you talking about within your workplace individuals where their workload has gone up exponentially over the last few years, and therefore when they finish their work they already feel exhausted, so they're maybe less likely to stay active and keep moving. So the more we move, the better our health and well-being is going to be. And then if we jump on to the next one. So notice, and this is one that I often see as something that people can do alongside one of the other ones. So if, for example, someone's made the decision that, right, I'm going to move more, I'm going to go out for a walk after work or during lunchtime or something like that. What notice is about is noticing the things that are going on around us. So when you go for that walk, is there something that you can kind of take in as you're going for that walk? Most of us, we might think, right, we live in areas that might have some historical interest or something like that. And could we maybe kind of use that opportunity when we're going out for a walk to take in some of the whether it be nature or history that's going on around us? And then that also links in with what we've already looked at, is the learning, where you all of a sudden you're also learning about things that you didn't know about before. And then if we can jump onto the last one, please, which is give. And this is about that, again, human nature, about giving to other people, supporting other people, whether that's, lending a listening ear and having a conversation and connecting, or whether that's actually giving your time or giving your energy into some sort of voluntary activity. All of these 5 different aspects of the 5 ways to well-being, if we can access them and if we can incorporate them into our daily lives, will have a beneficial effect on our well-being. So there's a quick whistle-stop tour of the 5 ways to well-being. If we jump onto the next slide, because I know I'm going on as usual. These are just a few other things that we're working on in Plymouth at the moment around well-being and working with organisations within our area. Financial well-being, as we heard earlier, we've got a massive cost of living crisis going on at the moment, and employers need to be aware of the challenges that is putting their workforce under, and there is support available around financial well-being. I've popped a link in the presentation there, and this is an organisation, the Money and Pension Service, which we've worked quite closely with down in Plymouth, and they've attended some of our kind of local network meetings to help connect with organisations in our area for those organisations to then put their staff and their colleagues in contact with the Money and Pension Service. So there is support available, and that's going to be something that, by the looks of it, isn't going to be going away in the near to distant future. The next one is trauma-informed practice. So some of you may not have heard of this before, and it's only something that we've been looking at within Plymouth for the last sort of 3 to 6 months. But it's helping organisations to understand the impact trauma might have had on an individual when they were younger or as they've grown up, and the impact it has on the way they behave within work. And with that better understanding, like we've said already this afternoon, you can put in better support and have better communication, and therefore keep people in work, keep people happy in work. Because I think where we've often seen, if individuals have had trauma in the past and then they struggle within a working environment, the worst scenario there is that they leave that organisation, and not just for the individual, but also for the organisation itself. They then have to, go out and look to find someone else. And then the final one was a menopause awareness. Depending upon the organisation you work in, it wouldn't be, unheard of that basically 50% of your workforce are women. And as we heard earlier, the age of our working population is gradually getting older. So to ignore this group of individuals within a workplace isn't sensible. And the better awareness you have around the menopause and the impact it has on the way individuals can concentrate, and the impact it has on their mental and physical well-being is just so important. And we've mentioned managers so many times this afternoon. This is the sort of thing that, especially, and I'm one myself speaking as a male manager, having better understanding and better awareness of that is only going to have a beneficial impact on both the way you can manage your team, but also those team members that you are managing, where they feel happy to come and have a conversation with you, knowing that you are open-minded and you are flexible, and that you've had some information about the impact that the menopause can have on the way people are able to work. So if we jump on to the next slide, because I'm going on as usual. These are just a few things that we kind of do in Plymouth. So we're quite lucky within the Plymouth area, where we are commissioned by the local Plymouth City Council to deliver 3 different wellbeing at work programs. We've got our Wellbeing at Work Awards, which has a kind of a structure and an evidence base, and an organisation that signs up to that will go through this process to show they are committed to wellbeing at work. We've got wellbeing training. I think someone mentioned MHFA earlier on this afternoon. We've got Connect 5 training, which goes into more detail around the 5 ways to wellbeing. And then in addition to that, we've got our wellbeing champions, which are kind of advocates within organisations that we train up to support their colleagues and to kind of, I suppose, create a network of support across their organisation. The links are in that presentation there to the individual, or to the website, and if anyone wants any more information, they can get in contact and have a little look on our website. And then the next slide, if you don't happen to come from Plymouth, I know that we've also got a Wellbeing at Work service that covers the Cornwall area as well. And if you are watching from elsewhere in the country, get on Google, have a little look. Most areas have some sort of offer where it's, part of the wellbeing commission service locally to support organisations to take wellbeing at work more seriously. And then I think we've just got one more slide. And yeah, just to thank everyone for their time, and go away this afternoon, whether you're an individual or an organisation, just pick one of those segments. What can we do either individually, or what can we do to empower our workforce to look after themselves better, and what environments can we create? But thank you for your time, and sorry if I rambled on Emma, but yeah, I don't know whether if we've had any questions in, or if you've got any questions, I'm happy to answer anything.
Thank you so much, Greg. That's really good and great to hear some key things that people can put in place to develop some of that support in a nice, easy to understand model. Because I think sometimes we can get overwhelmed with models and strategies, but really nice to see some simple language as well. Brilliant. So I'm going to hand over to Geraldine now, who will hopefully have some questions for our panel of guests.
Hi Emma, and thank you. It's certainly got everybody thinking. I've got lots of comments and questions for everyone, I think. So just some comments from Mark, who says, wouldn't it be interesting to see employers investing more in community support, shifting their spend from insurances, benefits and reward packages? He also says, and this is regards to Kevin, to your section, that focus on the value of care is really, really important for our employees as well. And I think Andy's video really resonated with people. People have commented what a brilliant video it was and how inspiring it was. And I think it certainly smashed away any preconceived ideas about what people may have about what they think about people can and can't do. So that's fantastic. Comment from Rob, this is an interesting one, and one of the themes that he has found recently with people is that social anxiety, due to being locked down for nearly 2 years, that something he always recommends is voluntary work to get people used to being back around others. A request from Anna as well that says, could we have the stats, some of the stats we've talked about, please? So I'm sure we can get that circulated to anybody. Certainly, if you're signed up on our Eventbrite page, we're very happy to circulate some information to you. If you're not, it's not too late, sign up now and we'll make sure everything gets sent to you. So just some questions now. I've got a question first for Paul. Paul, this is from Mark at Microlink PC. Have investors in people looked at adopting or promoting a pro-social approach to building more collaborative workplaces? That's workplaces that have a shared identity and purpose.
Yeah, it's a brilliant question. So we are very much a purpose-driven organisation, and our people management framework very much focuses on making sure that the organisation is aligned around about a clear purpose, and that your leadership and your values all relate back to that. I'd highly recommend Dan Pink's book called Drive, which, you know, I think is probably one of the best books I've read in the last 10 years. If you've got, you know, clear autonomy, you've got people who have got a focus on wanting to get better at things, and it's linked back to a purpose. So being good at finding something that you want to be good at, having autonomy to do that well, and it being linked back to purpose, they're key drivers of intrinsic motivation. So if we can get more organisations that are purpose driven in that way, you know, I think it creates better healthier workplaces. And a lot of people say to me, oh well, you can't have purpose in my job, you know, like we sell stationery or whatever. There's purpose in everything. And I saw a brilliant example of this where I think it was United Utilities, and the guys that go down into the sewers and blow the fat burgers away with the pressure washers, probably one of the most disgusting jobs you can imagine, but they used that approach to improve the engagement of their team, and they connected what they did back to the impact that they have on society and how important what they do is to society overall. And for them, connecting what could be seen as a menial and quite, you know, disgusting task, actually they gave it a sense of meaning and a sense of, you know, value, that it was making something really important for society, and it totally changed the way that those guys framed their job. And I think we can do that in most organisations and most things that we do.
Thank you, that's brilliant. And I've got a question for Andy. Andy, Susan from Truro wants to know, is making workplace adjustments costly to an employer?
So yeah, it varies quite a lot. A lot of adjustments are quite straightforward and very low cost. Things like standard magnifiers and changing any Windows settings can be cost free. Sometimes there can be quite big costs involved, but remember that Access to Work will fund either all the cost or at least a significant part of the cost. So if someone is starting work, they're in their first 6 weeks, Access to Work, that's a DWP programme for anyone who doesn't know it. Access to Work can pay up to 100% of costs. For existing employees, so people that have been there for longer, Access to Work looks at cost sharing because it recognises that there is a business benefit in retaining someone, so they expect a contribution, but that does vary depending on the size of the employer. So generally speaking, the costs shouldn't be off the scale. It would be horrible to look at a position where it becomes unreasonable for an employer to make an adjustment. So in my experience, most of the time, costs are reasonable and proportionate.
Yeah, brilliant. And if they are slightly more expensive, there is government funding available to support that, isn't there?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. This is a great question, actually. This is for Flipper and Greg. How can employers encourage line managers to be more emotionally inclusive? Should we take Flipper first?
Yeah, hi. Great question. I guess part of that is also creating a space around the culture being psychologically safe. Because if a manager can talk about mental health or be open around mental health, then other people around them will be as well. So there's something around role modelling, but making sure that actually it's okay to talk about some of the sort of mental health issues. And part of that could also be around training. So getting a group of people in training. Greg, you can talk a bit about what we offer in terms of training, but that's really, really important. But actually having regular conversations and open conversations about mental health, I think it's really, really important.
Thanks, Flipper. Yeah, I think it's about creating environments where individuals feel that they can ask those questions and have those conversations in a safe environment. Training can play a part because it gives our managers more knowledge, and usually from more knowledge comes more confidence around asking the right questions. And if individuals come to us as managers, us actually feeling as though we've got some knowledge and some understanding to be able to provide some solutions or to be able to signpost on or whatever it might be. I think part of it as well, and this is a difficult one within lots of different organizations, is our managers are so often sort of stuck in the middle between where the crux of the business, you've got the workforce delivering or manufacturing or whatever it might be, and you've then got the managers that sort of have an impact on that, but they're also the ones that get the pressure from the top where we need to be doing more of this, or we've got another service that we need to incorporate with your already, minimal staff group. So I think it's one about training and creating those environments, but also where an organization can, giving our managers the time to be able to do that, to be able to ask those questions and to listen takes time. And so many managers I speak to, they're good people and they want to help their workforce. But what they continually say to us is, I just don't have the time, Greg. So an organization also needs to be thinking about that. And, I know I mentioned it earlier, but that Wellbeing at Work Awards that certainly we advocate down in Plymouth, part of that is creating that sort of importance around giving managers time to look after their staff. So.
Brilliant. That's fantastic. And I think we just got time for one very, very quick question, and it's for you, Adam. If you can give us just a brief answer. It's a really great question. How do you support participants that are or people that are anxious about their first day of work?
So, like I said in my example earlier, we would take time giving you a few phone calls each for the first week or two until we knew your first day at work, and then we'd be more than happy to phone you on your way to work, whether that be a bus journey, train journey, boat, whatever. We'd spend the time until you reached the destination, and we'd go through different ways that you can help yourself, like in the evening, the night before, your sleep, your drinks, your breakfasts. It all helps.
Fantastic, thank you. And I think a really strong message is that employers aren't alone. The support is out there. back to Emma.
Thank you so much, Geraldine, and thank you to everybody that sent questions in. They were really, really good questions. And thanks to all of our guests today. So for me, today's session has really highlighted some of the challenges that we're currently faced with, but more importantly, whilst providing tangible, tried and tested solutions that will help to boost employee engagement. We know, don't we, that engagement in work is key to employees that thrive, which in turn will drive business forward. The last 2 years has seen really drastic changes in people's priorities. Work-life balance is now often quoted as the single most important element when a candidate's considering a new role. We've seen high levels of the ageing workforce leaving the labour market, astonishing figures of people looking to move into new jobs due to resignation, that is, rather than dismissal or redundancy. Figures reported that almost 1 in 5 people are looking to change jobs in 2022. Ensuring employees are engaged and have a positive work experience is vital to overcome some of these challenges. So making adjustments, working with individuals to ensure their experience is positive isn't often overly time consuming or costly. And we've heard that theme throughout, but it absolutely will enhance employee engagement and positively impact attrition levels. So CTEC Plus's objective is to support our participants into sustainable work. We do this by supporting individuals and employers to ensure we get the right people into the right job. Please do get in touch if we can help you with any of the topics today, recruitment, retention, disability confident. You can reach us at employers@ctecplus.co.uk. So thank you for all of our delegates for your attendance and input. We'll be sending out a short feedback form, so please do return this. It will help us shape our future events. And finally, thank you to everyone involved today in making the event happen. Lots of work happens behind the scenes, as you can imagine, which is ultimately what makes it happen on the day. So please look out for our next equally inclusive event, and I hope to see you all there. Thank you very much.